This is The Edge of Excellence, empowering people to shape the future. Let's inspire, innovate, and explore together. Hello and welcome to The Edge of Excellence. I'm Jess, DeForge, and today we are talking about the lessons that come from a career path that has been anything but linear.
Yeah, and I'm Bryon Beilman, and joining us today is Krenar Komoni, CEO and founder of Tive. Krenar and I go way back. We worked together at Bitwave and RFI, and I watched him build Tive from an idea into a fast-growing global supply chain company. Krenar, welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks, Bryon. Really good seeing you here. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast.
Yes, no, we're so happy to have you here. And I'd love for you to start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are, where you're based, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm based in Boston, specifically Charlestown, where our office is. My name's Krenar. I'm the founder and CEO of Tive, and what we do is we help companies all over the world track shipments and understand what's happening with their supply chains.
Amazing. And can you take us back to your earlier career? So like what drew you to radio frequencies and wireless chip design in the first place?
Yeah, that's a company that Bryon and I worked at together. It was a startup called Bitwave Semiconductor. And this was in Chelmsford, Mass, at a Wang Tower. I think a lot of people know that as the Wang Tower. Still remember going to the 7th floor there. But the first time I got that job was as an intern after I finished my junior year in college at Norwich University. And the CTO of Bitwave, Jeff Daw, came to Norwich, interviewed a bunch of students, and picked me and another guy to come in and do the internship. This is 2005, right? I think so, 2005. And that's where I met Bryon too, because Bryon, you were running all the IT for Bitwave Semiconductor, which is really cool. And what we were doing at Bitwave was building a software-defined radio on a chip. So you could use software to change the chip to do 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE, Wi-Fi, and all you could do is like program filters, program digital analog converters, the RF chain. And I learned a lot about wireless from the team there. I did a lot of work and then design and just fell in love with wireless because like we're talking right now. We have Wi-Fi going on and there's no wires. Microphone has no wires. It's pretty amazing, wireless and how abstract it is and how powerful it is.
Now, as a little side, if I remember correctly, did you have a ponytail back then?
Yes, I did. Definitely not. Oh my God, junior year, I did. But then I cut it. And then I cut it. Yeah, junior, it was during that time that I cut my ponytail. But when I joined, I had a ponytail.
How long? Like shoulder length, like mine?
Yeah. My hair was up to here. I mean,
wow.
Yeah. Big Metallica fan.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
So, Krenar, when we had chatted previously, you talked about a project that sounded almost too cool to be real, about an RF transmitter designed to sit on a bullet for a government program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that story?
I don't know if I can go too much into detail, but all I know, I think you just mentioned RFI. And I did some part-time work there that was on a consulting basis. It was a few months, I believe. And the work that they were doing, and I was working on a little bit, because this is radio frequencies and chip design. But there was a specific program that we couldn't know exactly where it is, but after a few weeks and months, I think I figured out that it had to do with a program. And I don't think it became a reality because I think it's very difficult. But the idea was to build a radio, the TXRX, which is a transmitter receiver, a whole radio that's tiny on a chip and would be able to sit on a bullet. So every bullet that would get fired, be able to communicate and know what's going on. And that's it. That's all I know about the project. I don't think I know anything else anymore.
It sounds really cool. What did the years in chip design teach you that you still use as a CEO today?
I think the biggest one, I think, Bryon, you still remember probably at Bitwave when we were trying to tape out chips. and it's always was like, well, it's gonna be taping out next month and next month and next month. And I was just design engineer. I had just joined as a junior, like an engineer, and I still remember asking Jeff, the CTO, I'm like, Jeff, can I talk to engineers and figure out maybe there's a different timeline? Like if I go talk to all the individuals and figure out what's going on, maybe I can figure out a higher level instead of just this top down. He's like, go ahead. I'm like, well, I'm not like a CTO or a VP or anything. He's like, don't ask, just go do it. So then what I did is I went, so I learned that lesson, which is sometimes you just gotta do things. You can't ask for permission or wait for somebody to tell you to do something. You just have to take that initial step. And then after talking to all the engineers and all the parts of the system and the chip that we were working on, I built this spreadsheet trying to figure out when are we gonna be really finishing this thing. I was off by 2 weeks, which is not bad overall, but I learned a big lesson there that the best way sometimes is bottom up. And that's what I think leadership wise, I work a lot with my executive team and my leadership team, but I talk to almost every employee if I can, and if I could, if I had the time, trying to understand what's really going on with the business, because I think bottom up, you get to learn a lot.
Yeah. So aside for our listeners, can you tell people what a tape out is?
Oh, tape out means like when you're taping out a chip. As a fabless, meaning a company that doesn't own the factory that makes the chips, and the factories that makes the chips, maybe people have heard of like TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. There's the one that are making the wafers. What you do is you're designing everything. You're designing the transistors, doing the layout on how it's going to be and all the drawings. And you take this essentially painting and you're sending the painting to the factory. That's when you're doing the tape out. And your chip is like done, it's designed, and they're gonna go now and print it and etch it and build it on this wafer. And then you take this wafer after the tape out, and then you cut it into small chips. Like some wafers have a few thousands of chips in there, and then you put it in a package, and then there you go. There you have a chip.
Yeah, I think a long time ago, we ended up like just FTPing the files to TSMC, and here's a big electronic bundle. I think the tape out used to be like before you had the internet, you had to put it on a tape, a digital tape, and ship it, and say here's our design, read it. And so, but even today, everyone says tape out, and when you talked about tape out and trying to find out how to get it within 2 weeks, that's pretty amazing, because there's always delays. But during a tape out, from an IT perspective, the engineers are like that final push to get the tape out. Engineers are stressed, systems are stressed, everything that like it all compounds, and it's kind of exciting, but it can be a stressful period, I think.
Oh yeah, those last 2 weeks are the most stressful. And what happens is also you got to meet the timeline, because the factories needs to do your tape out during this time. Next week they have NVIDIA, the week after that they have Microsoft. Yeah. Then you gotta meet that deadline. It's very, very tough. Otherwise you're off by another 3 months potentially. But Think about FTP, right? An NVIDIA GPU that's very expensive, like it's $1 trillion+ valuation company. Their IP is this FTP file.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
TSMC, which is pretty crazy to think about.
So I'm curious, at what point you started thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur? Like, how did that journey transition? So I've always worked for small companies. I've never worked for a big company in my life. The largest company I've ever worked for is the one I'm at right now, which is Tive.
Impressive.
And the entrepreneurship bug, I would say, was in me since I was 14, 12 maybe even. But when I was 16 years old, I worked for a TV station that was being launched in Kosovo. I'm originally from Kosovo. And I was 16 and I worked with all these people who are way older than me. And I was building 3D animations, like when the news jingle comes up, like news or latest news, or, those 3D things that pop up.
Oh, cool.
I was working on that. And within the next 3-4 months, we had to launch a brand new TV station. And since then, I was like, you can create something out of nothing. And then hundreds of thousands of people are watching this TV station out of the blue. This was September of 2000, after the war. Once you do that once, it's a bug in you. Entrepreneurship, doesn't leave. Like, it was part of me since I was a kid.
Oh, wow. No, that's really cool. Bryon, I'm curious, as an entrepreneur yourself, if you feel similarly.
Oh, very similar. I think I wanted to start a company since I was like even in college. And I remember, I ended up working for a decently sized company. My first company was called Storage Tech, which became Sun, then became Oracle. It's like one of these big things. But I remember my aunt was a house cleaner, and I said, I want to help you expand your business. We're going to put a business plan. We're going to do this whole thing. And I remember meeting her at her house, trying to figure out how, let's do a marketing plan and all. I was really interested in not just what I was doing, but the whole business process. And so it was in me too, from a long period. I don't know whether it's always the case. It's like, I think if you do it just for the wrong reason, like, you got to have your power. Like, you'll see, Krenar, you've had, I'm sure it's been ups and downs. And if you don't have the fortitude saying, I really want to do this, it's not going to happen, right? You have to have that passion in you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people sometimes ask, what's one thing you want to tell people? I'm like, it's not, if you want to start something, it's not the what, it's not the how, it's really the why. If your reason is, I just want to make money, like, the moment you hit an obstacle, you're just gonna give up, because the why is not big enough, and that why is very important.
Well, Krenar, something you said about, you were working in a TV station, and made me think, and I don't know if the listeners I don't think they're still around, but I can recall early days of Tive. I've been following the company for a while, and you got really fantastic commercials or ads, I guess, right? You had videos. And I was like, these are really professionally done. I think you had them done in Kosovo. I think maybe you had some people there. I mean, so you've had this kind of, maybe we'll dig into this a little bit later on, but I think there's a technical element, but there's a creative element, and that all comes, it seems like you've got many hats, I would say.
That's a very good point and observation, by the way, because here's how the company kind of got formulated. In 2015, we all had iPhones. We're going to the App Store. We got this beautiful device in our hands. Everything just looks slick. It's very good user interface. And then I go to the trucking company, which my father-in-law had. And you look at the apps, and you look at the device that's tracking the truck, and then devices that are out there, these GPS trackers, like a black box with a switch turning on and off. I'm like, people in the warehouse are people. People in logistics are also people. People like myself using an iPhone are also humans. I think people in the business also in everyday enterprise and dealing with supply chain logistics deserve good design and good taste and good experiences. And that part of, my mom was a poet and a journalist. My dad was a mechanical engineer. And I think somehow I got both the brains a little bit. And so when I started Tive, I said, I'm going to build something that's beautiful, like just a very nice tracker that people appreciate and look and like. And this was one of the first ones here. And it's slick. It's easy. You press the button, you put it on the shipment, you get to know exactly where the shipments are. But then you go to the platform and you go to the software, and it's very intuitive and easy to use and easy to set up. So between design, it's not all just engineering and technical. I always appreciated the design part of things too. And I think then that comes into marketing and brand and commercials that you talked about. Yeah. I think at the end, I tell people I want two feelings out of our customers. I want customers to, number one, trust us because we're doing the job that we're supposed to do. And number two, I want them to love us. And love is a very, like Coca-Cola. If you look at the commercials and things, like you see a burger and a Coca-Cola and a French fries, you're like, oh, I want that.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling. It's not about the sugar and the water and the sparkles. It's more than that. And I say same with Tive. It's when people want to see that brand, I want that feeling of love beyond just the trust of the job that we got to do.
Yeah, when you mentioned brand, I think it makes me think about. There's an section in my book I talk about brand is basically it's the other side of a coin of culture. So you built a culture like we love our product, we want to make our customers happy, we can deliver on this, and you do everything to promote that brand, promote it. And on the outside is your brand, is your promise to your customers. And when those things, those two things align, I think it can be very powerful. Because if they don't align, like if you're in great engineering, you don't tell a great story, or you're a great story, but your product doesn't live up to it, those are mismatches. And I think how do you feel about that? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, 100%. And then I think the thing that ties them, to just making me think, I could be wrong what I'm just saying right now, but I believe the thing that ties both of them together are values.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at on our value side of things, like we have mission and vision and values and brand and culture, but values, number one, for Tive and the way we built it and the way I've always wanted to build a company was transparency first. And I mean, I'm not going to say anything about the past and other startups that we worked for, but transparency is key. And if you're transparent, that means you're transparent with employees, you're transparent with customers. That means if you're transparent with customers, that's your brand. Transparent with employees, that's the culture, but it's being driven by these things like connecting those two together. Another value that we have is we hold each other's backs, and we hold customers back if they're struggling with, and if we hold employees' backs together and we hold each other's back, and it's the culture and the brand, I think being tied by values just made me think. So I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But imagine if the values don't, like there's a misalignment. Like let's say customer always right. Then what about employees? Or employees everything and employees are always right. What about the customers? Like that's a bad value if you say something generic like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And your values are like the guide rails. They're like, as long as you stick people can make decisions, as long as those you're transparent, you have each other back. Like those are the things that allows people to be, I guess, empowered, right, to do the right thing. They know this is what we stand for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would say even your transparency also relates to your product, right? You're giving your customers transparency into where their shipments are, right? They know, like they just look at it, like they know where their shipments are. They know how all the characteristics of whatever so you're transparent with your customers, but you're also providing them with transparency to their business.
Yes, correct. Because now think of when a shipment moves from point A to point B. Any shipment going from Boston to LA or from Shanghai to Long Beach, it's not just one human doing all the work. It's not me taking it, swimming, and then bringing it in. There's a lot of handovers. It's on handoffs between truck driver, going to drayage, going to port, going to the vessel, from the vessel to another port, another drayage, another truck, another warehouse, another distribution center. There's a lot of handoffs, a lot of companies, different companies handling this product. And what happens is not just the shipper, the person who owns the goods is seeing that for their own transparency, but it creates transparency of communication with everybody. Because now the carrier, the shipper, logistics service provider, the shipping company, all of them have to be transparent, want to be transparent because of this. And it just makes the communication easier, faster, more efficient. And then suddenly you get to make decisions quicker, which is very important in logistics.
The way that you talk about your values, your culture, and then, how that translates to the success of your company is reminding me very much about the way, we talk at Evo and the foundation that Bryon and Jeff have laid here at Evo. So I'm curious to ask if you find, or if you can speak to the value in culture and supporting your employees. You mentioned like having each other's back and how that translates to value for your clients and customers.
I mean, yeah, I can probably do that for every single value, but that'll take an hour. But that's a good one on having each other's back, because I would say very concretely, maybe even specifically cases, if a customer has an issue with the tracker, they reach out to customer support. But then customer support works with the salespeople, works with the account management team, and then they all three are trying to figure out potentially what's going on if there's an issue. Then they each have each other's backs, and then the customer sees that transparency and them working together, and then suddenly customer feels like there's a unity at Tive, and it's not support finger pointing to customer success, finger pointing to account management, finger pointing to salesperson, finger pointing to finance, finger pointing to engineering, finger pointing to hardware.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's got each other's back, and then the customer actually not just sees that on an email, but feels it. That this is a unified voice coming from Tive to them. If there's an issue on an invoice, then accounts receivable together with sales, together with account management are working together and having each other's back. And through that value, right? If having each other's back is like the opposite of finger pointing.
Right.
Yeah.
The opposite of blame to another department or another person or another thing. So think of because it's the opposite creates unity. And as unity, when you go to customer feels that and says, well, this company actually, first of all, I want to work with them. But second, I can't use it against them.
Yeah.
Because if you see, divide and conquer, right? If you see a company that's dispersed and department A and B and C are saying different things, then you have leverage. You can say, I'm not going to pay the invoice on time. I'll pay it in 30 days when you do B. And then the B says, I'll do C. Like, if you don't want to pay a bill, you can do whatever you want. And you can see that. And some people might take advantage. I'm just usually our customers won't do that. But I'm saying potentially somebody, a bad actor could. But when you come unified, there's nothing they can do.
Well, that makes me think of something else. So the things you've had to do in the technology and this what you're doing is you're innovating and really doing stuff that people haven't done before. And I think part of that is for people to take some risks and say, we're going to try this out. We're going to try this. And so in order to take a risk, you have to have psychological safety. Like, it's okay to try to take a risk because I know people have my back. And they're not going to blame me. They're going to say, okay, I tried this thing and what'd you learn? Oh, it didn't work. But we learned something from that. Let's do it better. Maybe, the engineering works with account management, like, oh, the customer didn't like that. Great. Let's do a feedback loop, So I think if by that core value also, I would think also drives innovation in your company.
One of our values is relentless iteration, which means you're going to fail. So you have to iterate. You're going to fail. You got to iterate. Like the Thomas Edison concept of took 1,000 times to figure out the bulb. And by the way, I just learned WD-40, which is for corrosion. What does it do? I forget.
Well, it's a lubricant. It's a lubricant and gets rid of a corrosion, rust. Whatever. Yeah, rust. Yeah.
So the guy tried it 40 times. That's why it's WD-40.
I
didn't know that either. I just heard it 2 days ago. I saw it after 39 times, didn't work. And the 40th time, he figured out the actual lubricant that worked.
Yeah, I think it's called, it stands for water displacement 40, I think is what it stands for.
There
Something
we
like
go.
That. So
that means you got to fail 39 times. And, risk is, and now, especially with AI, like everybody's trying everything. Can't even stop it.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it's interesting because both of you are successful entrepreneurs. Both of you have talked about needing to have, a foundation of a quality product or service. And then this other piece of the culture and the values, I think, is just as important, and like making sure that your people are well taken care of because they're the ones that are serving your clients. And so it just creates this whole package of a company that people really want to work with and refer, which is really cool that both of you kind of share that same mindset when it comes to your companies. When we did our pre-call, Bryon actually made a point to talk about the fact that no real success is linear. And so I'm wondering if, looking back across your career, if you see that most clearly in any one spot that you could speak to.
Jessica, I think it's definitely non-linear. I know it sounds cheesy, but as long as I look at things one day at a time, and I tell my team, even sometimes I use that sometimes term too much. Sometimes just say one day at a time, one day at a time. Literally all we can do is do our best today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, and yesterday is just gone. Like, there is no way we can do anything. So if I look at it that way, it just seems like, yes, it's non-linear, because some days are hard, some weeks are hard, some months are harder, some years are worse, some years are better. But all I know is that I'm doing my best today. And the rest kind of takes care of itself. But yeah, and then the other part is another cheesy term, taking lemons and turning them into lemonade. I mean, I got married, my wife's dad at a trucking company. I knew wireless, and I'm like, let me track your trucks. Like, it just, people sometimes think too much and overthink and when and how. And when I started Tive, my daughter was 2.5, and my son was in my wife's belly. Like, there is no, let me wait until he's born, or let me wait until I graduate, or let me wait. Like, there's just no time. Like, there's no good time. It's just now. It's today. And I think, cheesy, like, do your best today and turn lemons into lemonade. But I think it works.
Well, when you just said that, when I started IEVO, trying to think, my kids were very young, and I remember people was like, how are you going to pay the bills? What if you do this? Like, this sounds really risky. And, and so I remember saying, well, I guess I believe, I would say two things. Like, I believe in what I have to offer, and either I got to try it and either succeed or fail, but I need to try it. And so I think that's, it sounds like you have very similar mindset. You got very young children, it's life is super busy at that time. And so, but you just did it.
Yeah. I mean, the other trick you can play is, do you want to do it when you're older?
Yeah.
Every day we're getting older, every day. So,
well, and it goes back to that why and how important that why is, because that's what's going to power you through when, it is nonlinear and it's difficult. So, Krenar, you talked about, starting based off of a problem that you saw, with your father-in-law and his job, and you're building this prototype while you have a small child and one on the way. When did things start to feel less like a side project and more like a real company that you're going to put everything into?
There's multiple ways I can answer it, but I think I'll answer it the way that maybe the most way, like, psychologically meant for me more than the, we started selling. One cool metric, right? In 2019, end of 2019, when my VP of technology, myself, went to China, figured out a partner. We built these trackers, finally figured out how to crack the code on single-use trackers. We started selling 1,000 units at a time. I think we cracked that was a aha moment. Okay, this is going to be big. But before that, I would say even 6-7 months before that, the thing that really, we were running out of money. In 2015, I started it, and this is, call it July of 2019. We had $10,000, $20,000 in the bank, and I would go literally for long walks and runs and trying to just figure out. I would be on calls with tens of angel investors and VCs and everybody trying to pitch and raise. But one thing that I realized why I'm not going to give up and I'm going to continue was something changed in me where I said, even if the company goes bankrupt, next week I'm going to start it again and do this thing again. Like that was the moment. I would say this was around June, July of 2019, where that switch, I guess, flipped. Wow. You asked for that. That's where I realized, I guess it's going to be big and I'm not going to stop.
That is the definition.
That's 2019. Maybe we were like 150, 200,000 in revenue.
Wow.
And now
that's grit right there. That's what grit, like you were just you're gonna succeed at all costs.
Yeah, that at all costs. Yeah, that's right.
It's interesting you're talking about going for a run and like the stress that you were under as, you know, the company is losing money and you're just not really sure, you know, what the future is going to hold in the near future. We've had so many conversations lately with successful people, and there's this common thread of like walking, running, getting outside, stepping away from like sitting at your computer and, you know, addressing the problem or putting all these hours in front of the computer and the problem. It's just so interesting to me that this seems to be a common thread for very successful people and entrepreneurs as a way to kind of like allow yourself to think bigger and to problem solve, which I think is just really neat.
During those difficult times, when I was, like I mentioned, calling 10, 20 investors and VCs, being transparent, I was not doing them from my office.
Yeah.
I was outside like 20, 30, 40 feet away, but I was in a parking lot. I was somewhere walking. Didn't want to be isolated. Wanted to be you're trying to solve a big problem, and you got to do it. You do it quick. And you're right. When you go out, I don't know, just motion creates emotion. So you get body to move and you start moving differently.
I like that. So as you got out into the market, were your initial assumptions about who the customer was and what they needed accurate?
No.
Can you walk us through how you did it?
Well, at first I thought my customer is my father-in-law who owns trucks. Mm-hmm. And then I started tracking trucks for a month or two. And month two, I pivoted. Even then, when I pivoted, I still had challenges. But in the beginning, I thought it was trucking companies, and I was going to track trucks. There are like 3-4 million trucks in the United States, and I was going to build really cool software to track trucks. But then I realized there's actually a lot of companies trying to do that. And then I realized nobody was really tackling this design experience around tracking the goods on the back of the truck, not just the actual cabin and the driver, but the actual stuff in the back of the trailer, because stuff goes in and goes up and goes in and goes up. So yeah, it was beginning. I thought it was trucking companies, and then changed it to actual people who care about the goods inside the truck.
We were talking on the pre-call a little bit, even the market for the products that you were going to track. You had an initial assumption about which vertical you would go towards. It, that changed a little bit too, even, right?
Oh yeah. In the beginning, I'm like, vaccines, pharma. I want to track, like, it's obvious, temperature control, life science, drugs. And then I realized I got really hit hard there, because when it comes to regulation, when it comes to regulatory requirements, when it comes to meeting the pharma requirements, they're not going to just get any startup to track Pfizer vaccines or like any. It took me, I would say until sometime last year to get to pharma compliance and regulatory requirements and SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO, and it took the company a long time to get there. But then what I had to do is we went into food, which was a really good vertical, and we're very proud of how well we do there. And I just love food customers. And then we've expanded into high value electronics, industrial, logistics service providers, and also life sciences now. But I thought life sciences was going to be a piece of cake, but it wasn't.
Yeah, anything that's regulatory, especially when you're in the phase 3 and beyond, like it's really rigorous what you have to apply to have on your systems and how you handle things, right? Any little change, even in the software, like, well, it's if you change the operating system, you have to make this note because it might change how they measure the value, and so they're very particular. So yeah, I totally feel that.
Yeah. Did you start with a particular vertical, or kind of it was more geographical for you?
Semiconductors.
That's right.
Because I had a number of startup. Our first 3 or 4 customers were all fabulous semiconductor companies, and then we just kind of branched out. And then we didn't really have a defined vertical. We're like, we have some experience in this, and people said, "Yeah, well, it needs your help." And then, and we widened and then we narrowed down the road. So we're down to 3 verticals now, but we've because we found who works for us and who doesn't work for us, or where we can deliver the most value is where I like to say.
Yeah, makes sense. Nice.
So we talked a little bit about, stepping away, walking, jogging, and, clearing your head and how that can really help your business. I'd love to hear from you how you create balance, if you feel you have balance between all the responsibilities you have with running the successful company and then just life.
I don't think there's a balance. Yeah, I don't think there's a balance. It's whatever the world is needing and how it works. It teeter-totters. There's no such thing as, like, let's say 50-50, right? Or I keep it at 75-25. Sometimes it's 99.9 work. Sometimes family is very important because we got to do something that's very critical and something's going on. And there needs to be some balance for sure. But I think it's tough to answer, honestly. I don't have like a perfect answer there.
No, that's okay. I think that's the one day at a time, right? Like, you just take what the day is bringing you as it comes.
Well, Jess, when you said one day at a time, it makes me think about Jeff, my co-founder. Jeff is often, I'm usually like, let's go big, let's do this. He's like, okay, let's just make these incremental improvements about this. And usually he has to talk me down a little bit and like, okay, we got this good and we can't bite off too much. Let's just do one, kind of one day at a time. And so I think you and Jeff have similar.
But maybe I can answer your question. Actually, one thing that's true, Jessica, is compared to 2015, 2016, 2017, where as a founder and entrepreneur, you do so much on your own. It's different. Now with 300 people, I rely so much on my team. I have a great executive team, amazing people that work for them. It's different. It lets me have a little bit more time to think about strategy and where we're going to go as a business. Yes, I'll still take that one day at a time, but that was in the beginning, there was like no balance.
Yeah.
It was the 99% just work, because if I didn't put it in, there's nobody else. And being a solo founder is also very hard. Because you have to juggle everything between you and you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, I'm glad that you have the team that you have. It sounds like they're very supportive. Can you talk a little bit about how you built a team that now allows you to have a little bit more of that space and capacity?
It's honestly time, and as you scale, this is just a fact, is that some people will scale and some people will not scale. But the business needs to scale, and customers want you to scale, and the world needs you to scale. So the management has changed multiple times. If I go from day 0, from day 1 or 2, or in the beginning, there was no management, and then a year later, some management, and probably layers have changed 4 or 5 times, and maybe one department is more and another department is less. But finding people, what I've realized was more important to find people who really have gone through this scale and have experienced it at least once. And when they come here, it just seems like second nature for them, and it's a little easier for them to do. But the ones who are trying to, let's say a simple example is they've done great job at $1 million company, and the most they've seen maybe is a $5 million company. Now we're trying to grow from 5 to 25. Maybe it's hard for them, right? And they cannot do it. But some people do a really good job at morphing and changing and listening and scaling. But yeah, I'm just grateful that we have the team that we have today.
No, that's amazing. So you're talking about the level of growth that you've experienced over the past several years. What does that growth feel like from where you're sitting today?
If I look 10 years ago, by the way, company started 11 years ago on June 8th. So it's really cool. It's been 11 years, probably when this podcast goes live. But it's we're going to be 100 million in revenue this year.
Congratulations.
Wow.
We've shipped more than 4 million devices to date. And we're still growing at 50% a year, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Trying to continue that scale. I don't know. It feels very exciting compared to when you're small and trying to figure things out. I love both parts. Yeah, it just this is how I would say this time is different. Is I'm very grateful and privileged and honored that we as a company have, quote unquote, the right, and we are here to be able to execute and actually win this market and win this industry. We are it feels like we're now in the arena and we're one of the players and not just a spectator. And that's a huge difference.
I can imagine too. I mean, because, being an entrepreneur every day is like, okay, we get this barrier, we got this, whatever. And then every once in a while it's good to stop and go, wait a second. We just hit a milestone of $100 million. So you have to, sometimes it's so easy to go like, okay, what's the next problem to solve? And just to stop for a second and go, oh, let's celebrate this. Cause it's like, you're in rare territory. I mean, there's not very many companies that can have $100 million ARR. Like, it's just not, it's rare.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to what's driving this pace of growth? Like, what do you feel is helping you this success?
We got product market fit, which is cool. Yes, that's awesome. And we have a great go-to-market team, which I think drives a big part of the success for sure. Mm-hmm. But there is this big need. People and companies are tired of trying to figure out and piecing things together of where my shipment is. And they say, you know what? There's a tracker. Oh my God. Okay. I can just take this, press the button, put it on the shipment. And here we go. I get to know exactly where my shipment is, and I don't have to rely on anyone because it's my shipment, it's my data, and I get to now build workflows and AI agents, and I get to make my supply chain more efficient without relying on anyone else. Mm-hmm. And what's really driving it is this automation is becoming bigger. I think with artificial intelligence, this flywheel is going to get even faster, and more people are going to want more real-time data, so that there's no questions about the data, because AI needs to make a quick decision. In order to make a decision, what's the best data it can get at the most real-time, like the most timely manner. And I think that's part of it that's driving it. And then our scale, I think scale begets scale, and people start to rely more and more on Tive. And I think what's going to happen, our cost of hopefully trackers is going to go down in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So people are going to put in more shipments. But if I had to boil it down, really, people just want to know where their stuff is and they don't want to question it. And how do I do it in the quickest way? I just take a tracker, put it in the shipment, and I got the answer.
So something that maybe our audience may not know about your product, though, is you're not just tracking GPS, you're tracking a lot of different things. Can you talk about all the things you track that are valuable? Especially, I was thinking about, I know a little bit about this, but like the food industry.
Yeah, it's not just the location, correct. This has a temperature sensor, so we get to tell whether berries, whether fruits, vegetables, poultry, depending on the temperatures being shipped at. It has a light sensor right here. So if somebody opens up a trailer, we can detect that somebody potentially is tampering with the goods. It has a humidity sensor, so we can detect moisture. We can detect the orientation of the shipment. So if it's upside down or somebody tilted it, there's a shock sensor. If it's sensitive materials that we're tracking, we'll be able to tell if there were shock events and where and who did it. And then we also have this seal that you can actually attach into the trailer. So usually you place a plastic seal or a metallic seal, but those are, you cut them and nobody knows what happened. This is Bluetooth. It connects with the tracker. This is inside. This is outside. And the moment somebody cuts this alerts the user that, hey, somebody's tampering potentially with your trailer or your container. So yeah, absolutely. It's way more than GPS. And then you have a software layer on top of that where customers can set up geofences, set up route deviation alerts, set up thresholds, alerts, monitoring, workflows. Like, it just makes things more efficient for them on day to day, compared to make a call, figure out where the shipment is, get an email, log to some platform to see where one truck is, another platform to see where the other truck is. Yeah, it's a lot more.
I mean, so if I for the food part of it, I mean, I really appreciate this as a consumer, because there's less waste. If there's accountability for the shipment, and you say, listen, and somebody says, oh, these barriers are bad, like, why? And then somebody says, oh, these are being tracked. Like, they might actually behave differently. Like, I want to make sure this gets from A to B. I'm accountable for this. I know they're watching. I'm not just leaving the door open and letting it get hot and stuff like that. So that's probably, I would think, a positive thing for the industry in general. Yeah.
Is there anything you're excited about that's coming next for Tive?
A lot. I'm excited about this product here, which is the Solo Pro, which is pharma specific. We have a screen, and customer, and especially in the pharma side, just what they need to do is they need to know exactly, do I have to quarantine this product, or can I administer it to the patients? And they don't have time to log into a platform, see if the data's there. They just need to make a decision right there and then. And this is going to more massive scale, I would say, in the next 3 months. I'm very excited about this product to be able to serve the pharma market. And then there's a lot of cool things on the software, a lot of cool things on the hardware side, but one cool one on software. So if you look at a reefer, which is a refrigerated trailer, and you've seen trailers in the road, but refrigerated means there's like a unit that it's blowing air and making it whatever temperature you want it to be inside. Sometimes you, as a customer, you tell the shipping carrier company, the trucking company, hey, I want this to be running at 32 Fahrenheit continuous. Mm-hmm. But in order for them to save money, sometimes in cross-border, sometimes in other areas, they might turn it on and off. Like, it goes to 40, 32, 40, 32. Or they run it in a cyclical manner instead of continuous. They might save $50, $100, $150, but that's margin for them. But what we've developed is an algorithm that, with machine learning, that looked at all the shipments that we've done, but to be able to detect if the reefer is running on a continuous manner or a non-continuous manner. And now we can send an alert to the customer, and they can say, hey, call the carrier, tell the carrier, hey, I'm paying you for continuous. Why are you not running? And I think that's going to save more. That means it's going to increase shelf life of products when it comes to produce and fruits and vegetables. It's just going to make things better. But yeah.
Oh, that's very exciting. No, I love that as a consumer. I love the idea, like Bryon said, of there being tools like this that companies will be able to use to better make sure that the quality is controlled for products for consumers. I'm sure over your career, you've received a lot of advice. I'm curious if there's one piece of advice that kind of stands out to you that has really helped drive you throughout your career path.
I think maybe I already answered that, which I would have answered is what Bryon I mentioned, and just with the Bitwave, don't wait for somebody to give you permission.
Yep.
Don't wait for the right time. If there's something that needs to be done, a job needs to be done, and you're the one, you can actually go and do it and see the results, just go ahead. I don't think anybody out there is gonna lay a red carpet for you to do something. Just go and do it. Just do it, like Nike, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, Bryon, before I ask our last question, I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else you wanted to ask.
No, well, the only I don't want to ask, but since we have a similar interaction with like Bitwave, I will say that Russ and Jeff, who were two of the co-founders of Bitwave, they were actually an inspiration to me as far as entrepreneurship, right? I think they worked pretty well and they still work together, at a company. So you had some, I think you had especially with Jeff, I think you had a good initial mentor, right? And so, if they're listening to this, hats off to both you guys, Russ and Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot about marketing from Russ too. So he was the CMO, Jeff was the CTO, and I was very lucky to join. I was 21 years old, so
wow,
it was a good experience back then.
Amazing. So we like to ask a final question of guests, and that is, can you tell us something interesting that people may be surprised to learn about you?
I used to be a goalkeeper, and I decided not to do goalkeeping. And then 2 years ago, decided to do more goalkeeping. After many, many years, I haven't done goalkeeping. I'm like, let me go and join a team in Arlington here. And I ruptured my Achilles tendon a year ago. Thanks God, everything's good now. I'm walking, I'm running, but that's something interesting. And I did it 4 days or 5 days before Jason Tatum.
Wow. Wow. Well, yeah, you don't mind people kicking balls at you at 80 miles an hour or whatever, and
that's a high pressure position.
I love it.
That's awesome. Wow, that's great.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Krenar. Yeah, and for listeners who want to learn more about Tive and follow your journey, where would you recommend that they go?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, but also just go to tive.com. Tive.
All right. I will link both of those in the show notes for any listeners or viewers. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and visit iuvotech.com for more conversations exploring leadership, culture, and technology at the edge of innovation.
Yeah, and Krenar's story is a great reminder that great founders don't always start out planning to be founders. They start out being curious. As a matter of fact, he talked about the why and having an important why of the things too, and about solving hard problems and willing to keep learning along the way. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious.
Thank you for tuning in to The Edge of Excellence. We hope today's insights empower you to shape your future and rise to your full potential. Let's continue to grow, innovate, and lead, pushing the boundaries of excellence.